guest, Lars Ottoson, was there to transmit to the Scandinavian countries the verdicts that were handed down at the Nuremberg trials.
I shared the room. We were 4 in a room. We lived in a place called Schloss Farben. That was IG Farben Bayer, you know, the one that made aspirin, one of the, and they had a big castle. And the press was housed there. We slept on camping beds, about 4 or 5 in a room. And another young reporter was there, and I found that out later, that we actually slept in the same room. It was very famous today, Andy Roney.
Andy Roney.
60 Minutes. He was working for Stars and Stripes as a young war reporter.
That's right.
He was still a bit older than I am.
At Nuremberg, did you see Robert Jackson in action?
Yes.
What did you think? What was your impression?
I can't tell you. I just really don't remember. I saw this man. I saw several of these men in suits, you know, doing their job. I didn't think very much about Robert Jackson, except, I mean, he was very direct and very pointed. I mean, he didn't prosecute.
That's right.
He stated.
Right.
He came up and stated facts, and they were not something. They were. But otherwise, I had my best impression of him is from what I read about him in London, and how he tried to explain how he was going to put his team together. And of course, today, what he did in Nuremberg was basically to lay the foundation for the fact that no obedience to any military or civilian superior is an excuse for committing war crimes or any other crimes. And I mean, basically, if you look at it, that is the essence of the whole Nuremberg trial. And that was what he, long before the trial, had set as a goal. And he succeeded. And I think that is his greatness. That's what his testament to the world, which is today tested, of course, in the trial in Hague against Milosevic.
Absolutely right.
I mean, the aura of Nuremberg hangs over that Hall of Justice in Hague. And so he is partly there.
That's right.
And there were, when I looked out there on the defendants, and they looked no difference to the old people who sat in rocking chairs in Miami Beach. Strip officers of their uniforms, especially the generals, that are in their 60s. They look at any 60-year-old, and they at the same time lose their dignity the way they did. They look even worse. I thought it was a sorry-looking bunch of people sitting there. The only one that was on any trial was Göring. But he had already decided that he was going to be sentenced to death. He knew that. And he was certainly also for the fact that he was going to commit suicide. So he didn't give a heck. Hess, of course, he wasn't with it at all. Sometimes I wonder that he didn't know where he was. I mean, he was sitting fiddling all the time. And the others, they were sitting there stone-faced. And von Papen, he probably thought he was going to get off. He had a little bit of the foxy look, but it was none of these guys that had been, none of these guys who had been the power of the world in those days looked like the power of anything any longer. I thought there was That's- if you excuse my expression, it was a sorrowful bunch of farts. That's what I did. And I always said that from the beginning. And some of them listened intensely, and some of them looked like they weren't there. And that I'm not too badly off by saying this about them is like later it was proven, for instance, in Spandau, where guys like Dönitz, and was the other name, Herrn, Reden, two generals, that kept bickering all the time. Like two old men, they had to argue about everything and nothing. If you hadn't done that, we hadn't done this, and that's how they went on, day in and day out for 10 years.
Right. How long were you at Nuremberg?
I was only there about 14 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then I bought a Mercedes-Benz for £5 of coffee and 10 cartons of cigarettes. There was no gas in Germany, so people had cars, but no food. I mean, you got a meal for 3 cigarettes, and you got a hotel room for half a bar of soap. So I took that one, and I toured through Germany, and I wanted an interview with Montgomery that I'm sure he wasn't willing to give me. So I drove up to his headquarters anyway, and had a little incident.
What was that?
I came in this car, and I knew I had no appointment, and I knew I wasn't going to get into his headquarters in Flensburg, so I had to find out a way to get in. So when I approached the car to the gate, where you had 2 guards standing, I pulled the choke of the car, so the car started spluttering, blah, 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 and stopped. And I go outside the car, and I shook my head, and I said, "Oh, damn it again." And I go, "Hi guys, can you help me here?" "Sure," they said. They put the guy rifles aside and went behind me and pushed me going. So they pushed me through the gate. And then I took off until before they found out what the heck they'd done. And then
Did you meet Montgomery?
Montgomery was standing on the lawn together with lots of other officers, and he saw this Mercedes come in, and a couple of guys running there crazy behind. So he wondered what it was, and they explained he was a journalist. And he came over, actually, and said, "I'm not going to give you any interview, so just get out." So I said, "Thank you, Filmacher," and turned around and drove out at least. But my photographer, at least, he took a picture of him.
Perfect.